Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to our Foraker Realty Podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the hot topic, buyer agency commission. We've been getting a lot of calls about that. A lot of our clients, other agents are even looking for advice. I'll be completely honest with you before we go into this. We're also very open-minded, and we're also looking for advice on this topic. So we're just kind of hoping that maybe we can help an agent out there just get one or two things. But, one thing's for sure is that the industry is going to be changing with the outcome of the NAR lawsuit.
Yeah.
So,
and do you just want to maybe see if you could really quickly summarize? So how is that changing the buyer agent's fee structure?
So, of course, we're not going to know what the new norm is as far as how agents are going to be paid. One thing we do know for sure is that we will no longer be able to, as a seller's agent, advertise a buyer agency compensation to be paid by the seller. Also involved in that is that you're going to have a buyer agency agreement signed with your buyer before you're able to show them any properties. That's already been pretty common here. We've been working on that now. There wasn't much pressure on it before because you would kind of look at the buyer and say, here's our fee.
Right.
However, it's, there's a 99.9% chance that the seller's going to be paying that. So if there's a situation where the seller isn't offering us a commission, we'll bring that to your attention. But I could remember maybe 4 houses in the last 3 years that haven't paid anything.
Very slim to none. The only thing that I've seen more common than that would maybe just be they were offering out 1.5% or 2% instead of the standard 2.5% or 3%. But yeah, other than that, I've never seen nothing.
Right. Yeah, and the way that it works, so that everyone out there knows, is that the seller never paid a buyer agency commission. What happened was the seller, if you were hiring me as your agent, you would pay me 5% customarily. And then we would offer out of our 5%, we would offer that 2.5% fee to anyone that brought a buyer. So it was really the seller's paying us as their listing agent, and we're paying a buyer's agency out of that.
We're marketing to an agent to bring one of their buyer clients to our listings.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And that's a great point. I think, again, we're not going to know what's the new norm. The market may say, you know what, everybody's going to continue to offer out 2.5% around there. The market may go in a different direction, and a lot of companies may say that we're not paying anything to a buyer agent.
And I guess too, it probably is just going to be changing the conversations that you have with your seller clients. In a listing presentation, you go over how you're marketing the property. So it's probably just going to change in that small, well, I guess marketing the property is a huge portion of the listing agreement. So really changing that conversation of, okay, are we also marketing the property with, offering out a buyer agent commission, or are we not, right?
Yeah, one of the big things, that's a great point, Kate, is I would say, hey, I'm Mr. Seller, I'm going to market this property to all the buyers out there through different, ads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But not only that, we're also going to advertise it to all the agents out there because, of course, we've got every agent's name, email, and phone number.
Right.
So.
And we know, more likely than not, those agents that are working with those buyers, those are the pre-qualified buyers. Those are the strongest buyers that are ready to make a decision.
Right.
Versus, marketing to the buyers that are on Facebook just scrolling that happen to fall in love with your home but haven't taken any of the necessary steps to actually get there.
Yeah, the agents whose homes have already sold, they're in town for the weekend from a relocation. Up until this point, they're working with a real estate agent.
Yeah.
I could tell you if I was moving across the country and was in town for 2 days to buy a home.
Without a doubt.
I'm using an agent.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah.
I don't know the contract. I don't know the area. I don't know. There's so many different things, and I know we've been talking about it here at Foraker Realty almost to the point where I'm ready to vomit. How much we've just been talking about buyer agency.
Yeah.
But I still don't, there's still so many unknowns to me. And
Well, so what if we could pivot this way? So we kind of, the conversations with the sellers and we're having with them, I feel like they're going to be asking us about that. We kind of know how we can, work through that conversation with them. But what about a buyer that comes to you and is like, hey, listen, like I heard in the news, I'm going to have to buy a house and now I'm also going to have to pay you as a commission. I don't think I can afford that. Like, how are you going to, and we've already talked about it, but just to like share with everyone, like how.
Yeah. I mean, I think the very first step, I think that's a question for them ahead of the question of, hey, has anyone explained to you how agency works, right? I think it's important for them before you answer that question to know everyone's role in the transaction.
Yeah.
Look, the agent that's got a home, there's two different agents here. Mm-hmm. There's a buyer agent and there's a seller's agent. And the seller's agent has been hired by the seller to get them the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of headaches.
Yeah.
Now, they've only been hired to do that on that property. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a good chance when you're with a buyer that how many homes do you show them, Kate? 12, 15 houses?
Yeah.
Right. So, if you were only making money if they bought one of them.
Yeah.
Which one would you decide for them to buy, right?
It would be my listing.
If you were, right.
If I was the listing, but that doesn't mean that I have, that's because I have the seller's best interest at mind.
Right.
Right. So it kind of comes
the seller hired you to sell the house, right?
Right.
So, the other side of that coin is the buyer's agent, right? And that's where a buyer's agent comes in and says, we want to make sure you've looked at everything in the market.
Right.
We want to make sure that you find a home that meets your needs. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that a contract is written properly.
We want to make sure that you have the contingencies to make sure that you're making a smart, financial decision and you aren't,
right,
buying a dud.
Yeah, I mean, as the seller's agent, if a buyer comes to me that's unrepresented and they do not want me to represent them, it's against my seller's best interest for me to recommend them to do a home inspection.
Right.
It's against my seller's best interest for me to recommend that the buyer does a title search. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important as agents that, we explain, here's all the different things that we're going to do for you as a buyer's agent.
Right.
And
have that conversation first prior to explaining.
The fees, right.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a buyer orientation, truthfully.
I agree.
I think, we've always done it with the listing appointments.
Yeah.
We've always tried to do it with a buyer orientation, but once COVID came, I don't know about you, the market started moving so quick that I turned my hour-long buyer presentation into a driveway pitch.
Exactly.
Where I summarized that up in a minute and a half and we rolled on before we even showed the house.
Yeah, and I think it's also been very deterrent on what just who your client is, right? I have some clients that are first-time home buyers that want to know every single thing. So it's very easy to sit down and schedule a time for a buyer orientation. And then I have other clients that, either are first-time home buyers, but they're like, Kate, I don't want to know all the nitty-gritty, just carry me through this.
Right.
Or you have the people that have done this a couple of times, they don't need to go over it. But now, because there's a chance that they might be paying our commission, you can't miss that, no matter how many homes that they've bought in the past.
I think you need to sit down with them and explain to them your value as an agent.
Right.
Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm at fault because a lot of times we'll have issues pop up and my clients don't even know about it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I don't really want them to.
Right,
I don't want them
don't wanna
worrying
give
at
them a
night.
headache.
What's going to happen about the appraisal?
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it. We've got it all figured out and we're moving on. Now,
Right.
I think that, again, that's probably a way for me to reach out to them and ask for a referral and brag about doing a good job, but I don't know. I don't really.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be the person that makes a mountain out of a molehill either.
Right.
So
I mean, I think it's important for you to answer that question. When a buyer reaches out to you and says, hey, I realize that I'm going to have to pay for you, I think the first step is for you to explain to them everyone's role in a transaction, a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, and whose interests they have in mind. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's important for us to explain to them the way we get paid. Look, you're right. The answer is that we don't know who's going to be paying. Every seller is going to have a different amount they're offering. Every seller's da-da-da-da. But here's what we do know is that there's 3 different ways that we can collect that fee.
Yes.
Regardless if the seller's offering out 2.5 or not, you can still put that into your offer.
Right.
So if a seller's, let's just say, asking $300,000 for a house,
Mm-hmm.
you can write them an offer, and they're not offering commission. We can write them an offer and say, yeah, in our offer, we're requesting 2.5%
Right.
paid to Foraker Realty.
Right.
And go over with your buyer in the beginning. Here's everything we do for you. Here's the 3 different ways we get paid. We get paid in the form of you paying us,
right?
Which, by the sound of this conversation, it doesn't seem like that's your favorite,
right?
Right? We can ask the seller to pay our commission,
included in our offer,
or you could pay it, and we could ask for the seller to pay us in the form of a seller credit.
There you go.
To compensate you for that.
Yeah.
We've also got some grants that are available to help with a portion of those closing costs, but. The
other way is the way that we're hoping that it's all going to go is that they are still offering out a commission, and then we don't even,
Yeah, we don't have to worry about it.
Right. But regardless, it is important for us to know, we have to show the house no matter what, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to have our, client's best interest. And if they fall in love with a home online and they want to see it, we have to take them there.
Well, if you have an agreement with them to represent them, and that's why there's now the buyer agency agreement, because you can't have your commission stand in the way of you showing that house.
Right.
So that all needs to be pre-negotiated before you get them on as a client, and which is the reason that now that we need to have the buyer agency agreement signed.
And now you've said a few things like just within our company meetings. I mean, do you think that it's a good idea? And a lot of people are going to be seeing like a buyer agency just for a specific contract, like for a specific property, or?
Well, that's a great question, and I think we're jumping, but there's different types of buyers, right? So our company relies heavily on buyer leads through sources like realtor.com. So you have to think of the user experience of someone who's on realtor.com and clicks on a property they'd like to set up a showing.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we both know that it's going to be illegal for you to show the house or whatever if you don't have a buyer agency agreement signed with them. And, we also know that it's going to be very hard for us to convince someone who's just reaching out to show a property
right. And has gotten just a phone call immediately.
Yeah. To convince them what our value is and everything over the phone. They haven't even seen us in person. So
right.
I think, again, you go through your script. Excuse me, has anyone explained to you the benefits of buyer agency? Has anyone explained to you the different roles of everyone in this transaction? Great. Well, here's how it works. The seller's not offering to pay anyone to help you with this, blah, blah, blah. And then if we assume that they have an objection that says, look, I don't want to get in a long-term contract with you because I just met you, then we've suggested that one of the ways around that objection is to file or to sign either a non-exclusive buyer agency
right.
or maybe a property-specific buyer agency. So you could say, look, sir, I'm not trying to get married here, but if you do buy this home, would you want us to represent you? Here's the benefits. After we leave this property, it expires.
That makes sense. And then it's just a little bit easier for them to just feel like, okay, if I sign this, which I more or less kind of have to at this point in order to see that property, at least I know that I'm not tied to it for the next year if I want to buy a property. Because truthfully, I always tell people, like, listen, I want to work with people that want to work with us.
Right.
At the end of the day, if us signing paper really means nothing, but unfortunately, it does mean something because we really need it now. So, I mean, you touched on earlier, if you were moving across the country or moving to Florida, it would be a no-brainer for you to work with an agent. Is there any sort of market insights that we should be touching on when we're going over?
Well, I mean, imagine you're buying a home in an area that you're unfamiliar with, right? You aren't a realtor like us, and I think that when you put yourself in order to understand the leverage in any type of negotiation, you got to put yourself in the other person's position, right? So let's pretend that we are that buyer and we're prepared to buy a home without that. What are some things we wouldn't think of, okay? Number one, do you think that agent, we all know 4 home inspectors, right?
Right.
We all know the one that's going to find everything that's wrong for the house. which one do you think he's going to recommend you to use?
Yeah.
If he recommends you to use one.
Right.
Because it's not in his seller's best interest for you to even get a home inspection.
Right.
So, I'm buying a home. They're going to recommend probably the worst home inspector that you could find, the one that's not going to blow up the deal. Then what about, the lender, right? So maybe you're worried about your payment. They're going to give you a lender that's got a high rate, this, that, or the other, gives you a bad payment. When there's other local lenders out there that might be able to answer
Or it's
themselves.
like charging you a bunch of points just to get it down or something like that. Right. I get you.
What about the title company? What about, look, even all the contacts that we have after the transaction, I'm referring people 3 times a day. Here's my HVAC guy. Here's my gutter guy. Here's my cleaner.
The flooring guy. Yeah, exactly.
You really need someone in your corner.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think also even just being like, how much do our relationships our relationships with other agents and listing agents come into play too, where, if you're just kind of going to Florida, we'll say, let's just keep using that, and I don't know anyone and I just pick a random agent or I'm using the listing agent. Well, like we said, the listing agent may not have your best interests at mind, and then interview those agents in the area, see what kind of connections they have, because with the multiple offers, that makes a huge difference of just being like, oh, okay, no, like actually I'm good friends with this agent, that might give us some leverage and just make us stand out a little bit more.
And not only that, I mean, you're going to go down there and look at 15 to 20 homes?
Right. Are you really going to call 15 to 20 different agents?
Are you going to set up an appointment with 15 realtors?
Right.
If 15 realtors had my phone number and thought I was buying a house this weekend, trust me, I'm buying a new cell phone by the end of that.
Right.
Like, I don't even want to remotely come close to that.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
You're going to be getting 15 agents emailing you for the rest of oh my gosh, all sending the same properties. So there's just a couple reasons, and I truthfully don't think the consumer is going to care about this. I think that people are willing to pay for something if they're getting value out of it.
Right.
I mean, you go to settlement and you look at the HUD, there's 30 different charges on there of people that are getting paid out of that settlement.
Yeah.
Do you think the lender's calling them and explaining their value about why to use me and here's my blah, 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 and I mean, here's why you can pay me an origination fee? They're just not.
Right.
But if the lender made a huge stink about it and said, hey, listen, the seller always paid our origination fee up until now, but here's why I want you to pay it, and this is a way around it, and blah, 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 and you started freaking out about it, they're going to be like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, why am I paying this fee?
Right.
But the reality is that there's 30 different fees on there, a lot of them aren't negotiable, but some of them are, you pay your title company, you pay your lender, you pay your home inspector.
And really quick, not for nothing, I'm just thinking out loud here, but if the listing agent and the seller don't have an agreement to offer out a buyer's agent commission, and you say, okay, I'm going to try and beat that around by calling the listing agent, well, the listing agent could still ask you to pay him a buyer agent commission. Right?
Yeah, like there's no saying that he's just going to represent you.
He might not say that, okay, he's going to represent 2 parties still for his, only his commission, because there's just no guarantee in that. So
that would be an agreement between him and the seller. Yeah, of course. And that's another area where we just don't know, and we don't know the new norm. I think when talking with your seller, I would like the ability to market your home to the fullest possible extent that I can with any property on the market.
Right.
I can't stomach the fact of them saying, well, we can't market this out to other agents, and maybe someone listening saying, well, you can market out to other agents
because you aren't.
They just got to get their buyer to pay it.
Right.
But, and that's where, the ethics come in, and we can't spend too much time talking about people's motives behind commission and stuff like that. But I know one thing's for sure, everyone gets up and goes to work trying to make a paycheck every day.
Right.
And I don't think there's any gray area there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's pretty cut and dry. But so we talked about, some ways to make sure that we're showing our value. Is there any other common downfalls that you see buyers, come up against when they are trying to be a home that we help, carry them through with? Or, I mean, I know we've touched on a lot of things already, but
Say it again. What's
like,
the
is there any other like downfalls that you see like buyers run into where they're like
For not
agents
using
have
an
to,
agent?
yeah, agents have to step in to kind of help them get to the closing table?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few different companies and coaching programs that have put out like 100 or so items. I think you need to have your buyer orientation filled with the different types of value you add.
Right.
I mean, you know, in Delaware, the transfer tax is 2%. If it's it's 4%, it's customary for that to be split 2 and 2.
Yeah.
If I have the seller and you don't know,
Right.
you didn't sell a couple hundred houses last year, you don't know, and you got
Right.
no one in your corner. So what am I going to do?
Right.
Last second, all right, great, you're paying transfer tax, right? All right, see ya.
Okay.
Boom.
I want the house at that
I
point.
just got my client another 2.5%. So
Yeah.
just having a buyer's agent could save you right there.
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
Meeting them out there with the appraiser. You know, were repairs done correctly?
Right.
Did you get homeowners insurance?
Right. And I think even
there's
sometimes
150.
too, like, you know, the lenders and us do work together. You know, if there's a financing issue that comes up, how can we all work together as a team to try and get creative and restructure the deal that our client can still get financing? I mean, there's just a like plethora of things.
I mean, if I was dealing, we negotiate a few hundred deals a year. If I was dealing with someone who hasn't sold a house in 20 years or bought a house ever,
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, I'm running you over, you know? And of course you want to have ethics, but it's against I'm going against what I was hired to do to help them.
Yeah.
Like, I can't help them, you know? Well, so like, I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I think the purpose of this podcast is for the buyer's agents out there, right? And I think
1000%.
I think the main thing that we need to keep honing in on is you need to have your value proposition down.
Yeah.
You need to have your buyer orientation down. There's no question whether there's value there or not, right? But you need to sit back and think, if I was buying a home in a different area, what value would that agent bring to me, right? I mean, you know, and
I think too, just like what we've been working on with like our role play and everything is just making it like a very normal, comfortable conversation to have. Like where you said earlier, like if we're like dancing around the conversation and like we don't really feel super confident, then people are going to be like, wait, yeah, like what are you talking
Why
about?
am I
Like, I
paying
don't want to
this?
do this.
Right.
Right, exactly.
you can't bring
But-
that. Yeah.
You have to kind of just bring that like reassurance and like calming nature to it, where it's just a normal thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, anyone who doesn't practice that, I've talked to people who think I'm an idiot. Why are you
Right.
practicing those scripts? Well, here's the deal. This is something that we can look into the future and we know it's coming.
Right.
If you're going to work with a buyer in June,
Yeah.
whatever, July, you're going to need that.
Really
So,
quick,
like,
can I just jump back for a second? Because I feel like I'm doing like an okay job at having the conversation with like new clients that are coming in. But how do you suggest that we broach the topic a little bit differently with clients that we have been working for a while? Because I'm just like a little nervous. Like I don't want them to feel like I'm like scaring them into it. You know what I mean? I think maybe again, I'm making a bigger deal out of it in my head, and I just need to be like, hey guys, like this is the facts, you know, coming June, this might happen.
well, I don't know that. Do you have a buyer agency sign with them now? No.
Some of them yes, some of them no. Let's pretend that I don't, the ones that I don't.
But let's go back. So the ones that do have it signed,
Yeah.
it was more of like, hey, sign this, but the seller pays, right?
Exactly.
So you need to now come to terms with, hey, I think you wait to have that conversation I mean, there's two ways to do it. One, you can do it now.
Just be like, hey, yeah. Because in the agency agreement that we have signed now as it is, it says that either party can terminate within like 24 hours written notice. So
Right.
yeah. But go ahead. So
Well, I think
Maybe
you come,
wait.
maybe you tell them. I mean, here's the deal. There are companies right now who are not paying a buyer agency commission.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but a lot of companies are coming out and not paying a buyer agency commission. So if your buyer sends you that home tomorrow, you can have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
Or you could call them right now and just say, look, there's a couple houses out there, you know, they aren't paying my fee.
Yeah.
And here's some alternative options that we can use if you don't want to use it. But at the end of the day, if the buyer brings 300 grand to the closing table, the attorney's taking 2.5% of that and throwing it to the buyer's agent, and 2.5% of that throwing it to the seller's agent.
Yeah.
So who's really paying?
Yeah.
You know, it's a play on words. Like, okay, well, guess what, ma'am? Now you owe me 2.5%. So if that house was worth $312,000 by the time all your closing costs came together, I recommend that you now offer this much for the property, this much to pay the commission. It's the same number at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know,
But the seller's seeing
both.
Okay, yeah, I guess you're right.
And if before maybe we could say, all right, well, if they were paying it out of the price of the house, but it was in the mortgage, okay, well, we still have an option to do that. Now we're going to offer them $312,000 for the house and ask that they pay 2.5% commission.
It's definitely something to think about, because I schedule showings all the time for houses. I never ever look at the buyer agency commission.
Yeah.
Like what they're offering out. Never.
Do you think that's important at all, or no?
1,000%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so important. But you know, in this market, it's just like the hustle and bustle of like, okay, they want to see the house, you go, you show it, draw up the offer, and it's like, oh wow, like I should be looking at that. It's really important.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of agents that aren't looking at that.
I don't look at it.
Exactly.
I'm not saying you do anything wrong. I'm just saying, you know.
I'm like, wait, am I the only one? Okay.
I'm not going to tell you you should do that.
Right.
So, right. So, I mean, someone sends me a house. I'm out there. I'm trying to get out there in the next hour or so.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
You know,
like,
and I think for a lot of agents, you know, we had this conversation. What's the value of a buyer online lead anymore? I mean, you know, a big attraction to the buyer online leads was someone would come in, boom, you'd show them the house and write it up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I could tell you we're heavy on online leads. Like, we're spending a lot of money.
Maybe too heavy. No, not too heavy, but like, it's a lot.
Like I could, So maybe a lot of agents take this as an opportunity to shift their business to listing focused. I don't know. I mean, have you thought about that at all?
Yeah.
Have I ever called you and screamed to you about that at all, or no?
Just a couple of times. I mean, I definitely think that we should, especially because of how like big the budget is that you are spending on those leads. I feel like we could just reallocate some things and just see how it goes.
Right.
I'm not saying completely wash away with the like online leads and whatnot, but it's just going to change. I mean, I think that we've seen it change just from like the rates increasing, because it used to be, okay, you have a lead that comes in, the rates are so low, almost anyone can afford a house because the rates are so low. So then you could get a pre-approval. They were putting an offer in on that property, and we were getting it a lot of times. Now the rates have increased, so that slowed things down. And the affordability has changed, and I feel like, you know, now with this, it's going to happen again. But
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball either.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that out of the leads, there's only about 4% of that pot to 8% that is actually like that we convert right now.
Right.
If we were lucky, we would convert 4%.
Yeah.
We're not doing that right now.
No.
But I also think that if we had a very real conversation, a buyer agency with everyone, I think our numbers may go up.
Right. And also, I mean, maybe we had the conversation too, maybe do we focus like extra heavy on the people that want to buy and also have a house to sell?
Yeah. I think maybe that's what it is. Maybe you set standards for the buyers that you're going to take. And I think the buyer that's also selling will have a much better grasp on the commission side of it, because they're looking on both sides of it for themselves. You know?
Agreed. Okay, so here's a question. If we have a buyer that also is selling, they can't, let's say that they say that they're going to offer out the 2.5% to a buyer's agent. And then when they come and they find the house that they want to buy, and then they also have to pay their agent again, could they then change their buyer agency structure on the home that they're selling?
No.
Okay, I'm overthinking.
Well, they have a contract with you. When you sign the listing agreement, you sign
Agreed.
that agreement. This is what we're doing on this transaction.
Right.
Boom, done.
Yeah.
If I were them, I would recommend that when you submit your offer, you ask the seller to pay.
Yeah.
Just like you did. That's what I would say. I mean, and you can do that on every offer.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just interesting because, I mean, there's going to be some, it's going to be tricky because we're already seeing tons of multiple offer situations right now. So it's going to be a no-brainer for a seller.
Well, I think it's not going to be a no-brainer for the seller because I think it's going to be about how do I want to market this property? How do I want to allocate the total pot of money that I'm bringing in?
Right.
If I put a couple more dollars here, would that go to more people and make me a bigger pot overall? You know?
Okay.
I mean, there's fees to everything. Like we
Agreed.
don't want to pay to advertise your property online, but we do to get you more money. Like we don't want to pay for photos, but we do to get you more money.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is going to come down to what's the new norm. So if, that's what we're waiting on.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, I'm having a very candid conversation with my sellers. We don't know what the new norm's going to be. One good thing is that we're in a smaller company, so we're able to completely move as fast as as anyone.
Shift really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And two, we sell a lot of houses. So, as the owner of the company, I'm going on listing appointments a few times a week. So I'm having these conversations with sellers every week, and I'm seeing it, and we can all relay that as a team, back to one another. But I think what's going to be the new norm, and there's two sides of the coin, right? So either no seller is going to pay, or it's not going to be, very common for the seller to continue to pay the buyer agency fee, in which case, hey, Mr. Seller, maybe this is an opportunity for our listing to stand out. Or no one's going to pay, right? That might be the new norm.
And really quick, at what point do you find, since we don't know if it's not going to be displayed on the MLS if they're offering out, at what point do we as buyer's agents find out if they're paying?
You call and ask.
Oh, okay. So it just needs to be like a verbal thing. Got it.
Or and when you submit your offer, you submit a commission fee agreement.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. So, yeah. Did you use any of the questions I gave you?
It kind of sort of, I mean, a lot of it was just more so like, can you talk about the importance of professional networks? What kind of support can buyers expect from their agent through the closing process? I
think that's huge. I mean, we have a full-time transaction coordinator. I can tell you the value's there.
It's ginormous.
Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, just the help. Like, even if you knew all the work and you knew everything and you're an expert, I can't do this by myself. I can't. I mean, there's so much legwork that goes into, hey, instead of you calling 80 lenders and 80 insurance people and sitting on here's the lender you want to use, here's the insurance girl you want to call. And when you call Delmarva, hit option 6, then option 3, and tell them you want to transfer, and boom, it's done.
Wasn't there like a real estate attorney that recently said, like, they previously didn't use an agent, and they were like, I'll never not use an agent again because I didn't know that I was taking on a second full-time job.
Yeah, it's so much work.
Buy a house. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's insane.
She thought like, oh, she's a real estate attorney, like she'll just do it, and she's like, never again.
Yeah.
Like it's just too much.
It's so much. It's a lot of work for me. Like,
it is, and even just the communication of like deadlines. There's so many deadlines that we need to provide. The listing agent and the sellers with mortgage commitments, certain deadlines, making sure that all of those get hit, and then just relaying that information from one another.
And I think, listen. Even when I'm buying something, I have you do it because it's so hard to disconnect that emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, I know when I bought this building, I'm calling you. Give them whatever they want. I was telling you to offer them like $475, and I think you got it for like $360. I'm like,
no, we're not doing that.
You're like, okay, just relax. I think there's a big thing there with just not like showing all of your cards to the other side right away. You know, I can hear it in someone's voice. And I think any agent can. I think there's so much value there. I mean, just
How many people does Sharon usually say, like, with every transaction? She's talking to, like, I think she says, like, 10 different people.
10 different people.
Yeah. So that's a ton of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On top of, then you're also just trying to move. You have your family, you have your full-time job, your friends. Like, if you can take away that full-time job of, you know, just the back end of buying a home, there's a ton of value.
100%. I couldn't imagine doing any of it on my own. I mean, you know, and that's like saying, look, if you have a toothache, you can put a pair of pliers in your mouth and rip it out, right? If you wanted to. And there's a certain point where it's like, it's worth it to hire a professional.
Yeah.
I pay a professional to do my taxes. I pay a professional to do my law.
Right.
I could easily go on ChatGPT and get 90% of the way there, but I'm not willing to let that happen.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I think when you're talking about the biggest asset that's probably going to be in your life and your retirement fund, and now you're talking about, hey, you're going to pass that down to your kids. 1 or 2% swing
planning
in the wrong way could really, really affect it.
And even just knowing too, like, you know, this kind of touches on, you know, a CMA and then even just like your future planning. You know, your agent's there to help you through all of that and to give you like a yearly, you know, equity review and all of that stuff that.
And even helping you figure out, a lot of times I have to stop my clients and say, listen, what type of a product is this for you?
Right.
Is this your forever home? Is this your 2-year home? Could we pivot and maybe buy a rental for 2 years? That would be long-term wealth for your family.
Right.
Could we, you know, where are the interest rates now? What are your, we don't need to name all 200 values, but I think the key is for the agent, again, have your value proposition memorized, be able to pitch it to your clients.
Yeah.
And I think
and get comfortable with it. Really comfortable with it.
Because you need to actually believe you're worth the 2.5%. If you don't believe it, it's going to be shown all over your face.
Yeah. And not for nothing, I'm sure there's some buyer's agents out there that are going to be charging their clients 3%.
Right.
Because that's what they feel like their worth is, you know?
And could you imagine if you went to a listing appointment and spent 3/4 of the appointment talking about why they should be paying you and not the buyer? You would lose the listing.
I would go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would lose the listing right away. Here's why the buyer's not paying me. And I mean, when you think about it, why is the seller paying you?
Right.
That's kind of silly. I think I should pay you. What's it worth to me? Here, this is why. What's your value? Boom.
And just be on with it.
Simple deal. Yep.
Yeah. All right, cool.
So, I think it's time we wrap this up because I don't want to keep talking about the same thing too much. But
well, and also too, like we said, like it's still unknown right now. So just
we'll keep playing it by ear.
Thoughts,
And you know, if you guys found any value in this, if you know someone that's kind of struggling with, you know, articulating their value proposition, maybe getting their head around this, I hope we could help and maybe send this off to them. But again, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to delivering another podcast to you.